we've got our HTML, and now we're going to do some CSS to style this so that it actually looks like our design. So, to refresh your memory, this is our design, this is what we're trying to build, and this is what we have currently. So, we're going to do some CSS to make it look nice. To get started, we're going to create a new file. I'm going to call that style.css. And then this is the file that we're going to put all of our CSS code in. But when you actually go to a website, you're going to go to a page. So you might go to, if you go /nothing, then you'll get the index.html, which is this, or slash whatever. But the point is, you're only going to get that one HTML file. You're not also going to get this CSS file. So we have to link this CSS file to the HTML file. The way that we do that is in the head, I'm going to add this link tag. So link href equals style.css, just like that. Type equals text /CSS, rel equals style sheet, and that's a self-closing tag. So what's going on here? The href hyperlink reference, this is the actual path to the CSS file. So it's just style.css because there it is. The type is text /CSS. So that says that this is a text file and the language is CSS. And rel means relationship. And the relationship here is that this is a style sheet that we're going to be using to declare some styles. All right, we save that and we're good. So we can get started now, basically. We can, let's say, what's the first thing I want to do? So looking at the design, the first thing I'm going to do is make it so that our nav bar is 100% wide. It's got this little gray border on it. And then inside it, we'll add some styles to this H1. So our nav bar, well, it's just nav. So we can go nav, and then we open up these curly brackets and hit enter. And then we can start typing some styles. So this means that everything that is a nav, so the nav element, this is our nav, whatever we put in here is how it's going to be styled. So we can say width 100%, border 1 pixel, solid. And then I'm not sure what that color is, so let's go, if we go back to Adobe Experience Design, I like this color, this is a nice border color, so let's see what color that is. We can grab the hex code here. So hex codes are how you specify colors in HTML. So you can see that as we move this around, the color changes and this code changes. And that code is the representation of the color. So I'm going to copy that code, and then we can chuck that in here to make our border that color. So let's talk about the actual format of CSS. So what's going on here? Every CSS attribute is named, and then there's a colon, and then we end every line with a semicolon. And what's between the colon and the semicolon is the actual value that we're setting for this attribute. So the width, 100%. The border is 1px solid, and then this code. So each one of these different attributes will have a different format for what it accepts. So for example, width needs to be numerical. You can't give width a color. Makes sense. And the format for the border is this. So we start off with, what's the width of the border? What sort of border is it? So solid means it's just one color. We could have dashed. And then this is the color that the border is. We can also specify color by actually just writing the name of the color. And you can see that as I start typing, there's all these different options for different colors that I could use. But We want to use an exact color. We don't just want any gray, we want this particular shade of gray. So I'm going to use that. Okay. So we also want to do some padding. I'm going to say 20 pixels of padding. So what's padding? Well, padding will push inwards. So in this scenario, if we're thinking about the nav bar, you know, this is our nav bar. And then if we didn't have any padding, this would look a bit like this. The nav bar would look like that. But because we're going to put some padding in, it's going to, well, it's like putting padding on the inside of the box. So it means that this will be what it looks like. So it's pushing everything inside it inwards from all directions. If we want to, we could specify padding left, padding right, whatever. But we're just going to do 20 pixels padding for all the padding. Okay. And then we can save that. And then if we go back to our site and refresh that page, we can see that we're actually starting to get a design. Nice. But, problem. We've got this gap here. In fact, we've got this gap around everything. What is that about? So, by default, remember I mentioned default styles a while ago. There is a margin that is placed around the body by default. We don't want that. So we're just going to go margin 0. To cancel that out, save that, and now that is gone. And kind of a secondary problem, I think, is that we've also got this border at the top, but we only want that border on the bottom. So instead of border like that, I'm just going to go border bottom. Oops, I've started something up. Yeah, border bottom. And then refresh the page. Now it's fixed up. Nice. So you can see how it's actually changing what this page looks like. Excellent. Okay. Now, another good bit of advice is that you should never make, you pretty much never need to make anything full black. So this is full black. Full black. And it's a bit much. Whereas if you compare it to our design, we're actually using a dark gray for all of this text, and it's much more pleasing. So if we go into our CSS, we can really quickly apply some styles to a whole bunch of things in one go. So we could go H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and also paragraphs. We actually don't have any paragraphs in this, which is a bit unusual. But anyway, we'll do it as well. And then for all of these, we can set color to whatever the color is of this text. Yeah, it's the same. So it's that hashtag 707070. Refresh our page, see what that looks like. I think that's probably a bit too weak, so I might make that a bit darker. Might make that. Nice. Okay. Now, what about our font? So, this is not the right font. So remember I mentioned we can go to Google Web Fonts and get Roboto. So let's go fonts.google.com. And here's Roboto. And just to make it easy, so we hit that plus button. And then just to make it easier, I'm just going to get all the different versions of this font at once so we can have full flexibility with it. Cool. And then if we go to the embed thing here, and hit this import button, you'll see that this code here is between these style tags, which tells us that this is actually CSS. So we can take this and simply copy and paste it, whoops, into our style sheet, and then we'll be able to use this font. So here's how we can do it. We go font, family, and the family that we're going to use is Roboto. Perfect. But I'm also going to do this. So what does that mean? This means use Roboto, which is imported here. So here's where we import Roboto. But if you can't load that for some reason, like if the user has a bad connection or who knows, then your fallback can be sans serif, any sans serif font. So sans serif fonts are fonts that do not have tails. This sans serif font. This serif font. If you look around the A, you can see it's got little feet. It's got these little tails that pop out. No tails. Tails, no tails. So that's the difference between a sans serif font and a serif font. So now looking back at our page, nice, we're starting to look a bit nicer. So I'm going to do a whole heap of CSS styles now. Okay, so our content holder is the main hold for the page. So I'm going to say that's going to have a max width of 1200 pixels. And margin auto. So this means that it's going to be maximum 1200 pixels wide, but it's going to be centered in the page. So if we look at our original design, what I've just done is I've essentially made this box. So maximum 1200 pixels wide, however wide that is, doesn't really matter, but it's going to be centered in the page. So this is useful because this means that if we've got a crazy big screen, it's still going to kind of keep things left aligned, but a little bit centered. So it's going to feel a bit nicer. So perfect. So the next thing I'm going to do is the styles for this box, which really doesn't, the only styles that this box is going to need is, again, a maximum width, which will just be whatever this is, like 800, 900 pixels, whatever. So our left holder, oh, that's first. So our left holder, that can just have a predefined width. We can just give that, well, let's just say 100 pixels, and there's a lot of guessing and checking, so 100 pixels for that. We can have a max width on our right holder of 800 pixels. Okay, cool. Now you might be wondering, what's this about? I've got content holder and then a space left holder. This is a reference to left holder within content holder. This is a good way to very specifically reference things, but it can be a struggle when you've got like things within things within things, which we've got here. So you've got a couple of options. Well, you could give everything a unique class name, which that makes sense. Like that's totally okay. But it gets a bit tricky and annoying when you've got like a left holder that's inside this content holder and then another left holder that's inside this contact form, and maybe they should have slightly different styling, you know, so you could give them a unique name, but then you're just giving things unique names when really they're both left holders. They probably shouldn't have a unique name. If only there was some way to solve this problem. The answer is this thing called less. So less is like a different type of, like a variation on CSS that makes it so that it's really easy to reference things inside other things. And it does a lot of other things. It's about helping you to write less CSS.
Oh, I get it!
And the thing about less is, when you write it, browsers don't understand less. All browsers understand is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So when you write less, it actually gets compiled down to regular old CSS, but it's easier to deal with. So I've just created a new file called style.less. And for us to be able to do any less code, we need to download a compiler so that when we save this, it will automatically generate this CSS file. This will make our lives much easier. You'll see what I mean when we get into it. So if I go to this little block here, these are the extensions, and look for easy less. This is the one that you should install. So install that, and then you're good. So you can do a search here. So once you've got that, we can take all of our code from our CSS, which we don't need anymore because we're going to be using less. We can paste it in there, and I'll show you some of the ways that we can make our lives easier. So I just saved that, and if we check our style.css, this is what's just been compiled. This has been compiled from our less file. Okay, so this is all good. That can stay as it is. But this is where we can start saving ourselves some time. So we can get rid of this. and we can chuck both of these inside content holder. And with less, because we've actually put them inside content holder, when we save that, we go to our CSS, it will generate the code like this. See how this is what we wrote. But we've done it like this. This is much easier. And it compiles down to this. And we can use this same logic for everything. So now we can safely have multiple left holders, multiple right holders, whatever, and we can style them all separately with the magic of less. So, content holder, left holder, we've got a circle in the left holder. So we can close that now. So left holder, we can go circle, and that's how we can make our styles for circles. So I'm going to add in all the things that we're going to need to style, and then I'll talk a bit more about what I'm actually doing to them. Alright. Oh, and then we don't need this. So look at that. So this has saved us a wild amount of time. So if I chuck some styling on this H3, and I'm going to say, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to say color gray, like just for now, just so we can put some styling there. And I save that. If we go back to our CSS, you can see this is what I would have had to type in order to do that one thing for this one little heading if we didn't have less. So that's saving us a huge amount of time. Something I forgot to mention is what's going on with these dots. So in CSS, when we're referencing an element, we just name it. So body, that's a HTML element. Nav, element. H1, H4, P, whatever. Every time we want to reference a class, we put this dot at the front. And every time we reference an ID, which we haven't actually gone into yet because it's kind of pointless, we would use a hashtag. So it would be like that. We don't really need to use IDs though, because IDs are just a way of, it's like a class that can only apply to one thing. And it's like, why would you use that? You don't really need to. You can just use classes for pretty much everything. So yeah. Alright, so now we've got a lot of styling to do. So looking back at our website, this is what we got currently. So we're starting to get the layout that we want. We're seeing this is on the left-hand side, so that's good. Our navbar, it's looking all right. So the next thing to do is going to be, I'm going to create that circle, I think. Another thing about less is we can create variables. So I could create a variable up here and call it accent col, like accent color. And that color will be that green. Paste that in there. So now, in the code, instead of doing this color here, I might also just do text color to make it clearer. So text color, so this can be our text color. Specify it up there. And we can replace that with text color. So that now means that if we change the text color up here, it will change everywhere that variable is used. So this is really useful for being able to change a whole lot of things about your design in no work. So let's do that circle. Actually, let's just go in order. So we've got our right holder. Yeah, so circle is next. So looking at our circle, I'm going to give that a width. I'm going to say, well, I'm not really sure, 90 pixels. And a height of 90 pixels. Border radius, this is just how curved the corners of the box will be. So we could do 10 pixels for like a light curve, or if you want to go all the way, you just got to make it more pixels than the height and the width. So that way, it just means it's going to be a circle, which is what we want. And then the background color will be accent color, which is our green. Let's have a look what's happened. Yay! Alright, so we've got an immediate problem. Why is it that this circle is on a line and then this is on a new line? So this is happening because everything in HTML, well, most things, by default are what we call block elements. This means that although they may, so this text for example it's only this wide, but it actually takes up the entire length of the screen. And that's why everything else is below it. So that's why everything is wrapping down. For example, these things are not block elements, these are inline elements. That's why you've got that on this, sorry, that's why both of these are on the same line. So we can take some steps to manually tell the browser that actually we want this to be considered, we want this, I realize you can't see my mouse, we want this to be on the same line as the thing before it. I could show you how to do that the old way, but I'm going to show you how to do it the new and hip way using flex boxes. So this content holder, this is a flex box. So I'm going to say display flex. This is a whole new kind of CSS frameworky thing, I guess, that was created to make it easier to make websites responsive. So that means make it easier for websites to work on all sorts of different devices and to resize properly. So if I call this flex, then just by doing that, you'll see now that's wrapped. So now it's on the same line. That's pretty much all we actually need to do with that. And then we want to push down this whole thing. So how do we do that? Let's go to our, actually not our right holder, we can just do the whole thing. Padding top. So I'll put some padding on the top that'll push it down. Let's say 50 pixels, whatever. Yeah, looking alright. Actually, I just realized that I think that our circle is too big. So I'm going to resize that down to 60 pixels. By the way, if you hold Alt, you can type in two places at once. How cool is that? On a Mac, it's Command. Alright. Alright, so our circle's a bit smaller. Nice. Okay, and then we got to start styling this H1. So the font weight should be less. So I'm going to make that like 200, let's say. Font size probably more. I'm going to try 40 point on that. We'll see how that looks. Letter spacing 0.5 pixels. We'll see how it goes. And let's just see what this looks like. Okay, looking pretty nice. I think it needs to be smaller and thicker. It's always guess and check. Like, if you wanted to, you could do your design in such a detailed way that it's not guess and check. But I find honestly, it's not even worth it. It's like, you might as well just, because you can change this stuff so quickly. So guess and check works just fine. Welcome to the phone book. Nice. And then if we want this to wrap like it does in our design, we can set a max width on it. So max width, 300 pixels, let's say. That's too much. 600. Welcome to the phone book. Okay, it's starting to look good. Alright, and that's what it looks like right now. Now we're getting a bit of an issue. We can see that this text is a bit, it's not in line with the top of this. It's because there's sort of like a little built-in gap in text. Even if you put the margin on 0, it's still a little, so you can see that little gap there between the top of the letter and the top of the actual text itself. So we can fix that by putting a little negative margin on there. So for this H1, margin top, say negative 5 pixels. See how that goes. Maybe a little bit more. And that's put us in line with the top of that. Alternatively, we could have put a positive margin on this ball to push it down. Much of a muchness. Does the same thing. Okay. And so with our line, if we want to change its width, we go border. And then I'm just going to try 2px solid again. And then it's the accent color. And we'll just see what that looks like. And this will help us to get this line looking a bit thicker like it should. Okay. That's what we get. So I think that's too thick. Maybe not, actually. Maybe that's alright. Yeah, you know what? That's okay. I'm just going to leave it like that. But I think we need to increase the bottom margin here. So margin bottom. That'll push that line down a bit. Needs a bit more. So once you get your head around the margins and the padding and some of the basic text stuff, you're really just doing the same stuff over and over again, and you're just kind of guessing and checking until you get it right. And that's looking good. So now we're at this whole section. We're at this, below this line. So this is going to get a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to set this up so that this is a flex box. So let me show you that. Alright, so our contact holder, it's going to be a flex box. So I'm setting display flex there. But it's going to be able to wrap. So flex wrap, wrap. Flex boxes by default will not wrap. So what this means is if the screen resizes to a point where not all of this stuff can fit on one line, which by the way will be all the time, right? Because there's 4 here and there's no way that these 4 can fit in this area, which we're going to restrict, then it will wrap. So that's what we want. So we save that, see what we're dealing with. And it is not working. Ah, this is contacts holder. There's an S there, so I did a typo. Okay. See, now we're starting to see that this is working. But we want to set a max width for this whole box, this whole flex box. So max width 500 pixels maybe. Excellent. Now we're getting some wrapping going on. And let's make this work. So our contact card will have, oops, not padding top, it's going to have some padding in general. Let's just say 20 pixels. It's also going to have a border, 1 pixel, solid. Text color is actually the same as our border color, so we can just use that. We should probably rename that variable so that it makes a bit more sense. Probably we would actually separate it. So we have a text color and a border color because they're different things, even though they happen to have the same color. But who cares? Okay, so that's starting to resemble what we want, but we want some spacing between these items. So for our contact card, we can give it a margin, and I'm going to say 10 pixels. See how that looks. Starting to look good, but problem. So we have to find a way of moving these boxes kind of out so that they're in line with the green line above. We can do that by chucking a negative margin on the whole contacts holder that is equal to the amount that they've been pushed in. Margin negative 10 pixels. And that's solved the problem for us. And then we can just put a margin top and a margin bottom on that whole thing to make it work properly. So margin top, let's say 50 pixels, 30 pixels. Okay, we're getting somewhere. And then I just realized I've made a bit of a mistake because in our design, this line is supposed to be the same width as this section. It's not supposed to be the width of this entire green thing. So if we go back to our code, okay, I see what we've done. So there's a couple of things going on. So these small boxes, these contact cards, should actually fill all the space, which we can change with some flexbox rules. And this green line should be longer. So if I go to the major line here, the width on that can be 600. Okay. And then this minor line, and we're just getting this issue where this minor line here is kind of being centered. So we don't want that. So we can do that by turning the margin off for it. So we go margin 0 pixels. And then it gets left aligned. And actually, we probably want to set a bottom margin to that. 30 pixels. Push it down. And now we want to make these boxes fill the full length of the box that it's in. By the way, if you right click and you go inspect, you get this screen that can really help you to understand your layout. So if I hit this little thing here, I can move around and we can start to see how this layout is built. So I want to make these individual boxes fill up all the space of this. So you can see here that they're left aligned. We want them to be stretched. Well, sorry, not stretched. We want them to, well, I'll show you what I mean. Alright, so let's move that to the side. So for our contact cards, for our contact holder, we can go justify content. And this lets us choose from a range of different positioning methods, I guess. If we go space between, save that, we now get this. So now there is space between them. But they're not lining up on the edge of this. So let's have a look at what's going on here. So we can just set the max width of this line to just a bit less. So 480. Let's try that. Perfect. And that's lined us up properly. So that's in line with that now. Excellent. And we're getting really, really close to our final design. We got to do some work with this text in here. So let's do that. So I'll set the font size to a bit less. 12 point. We'll see how that goes. Font weight 400. Probably want that more. Okay. Whoops, and the color will be that's wrong. We don't need that because that's globally set. I just remembered. Also 12 point. But we'll take the font weight down on this guy. Nice, looking good. And then I'll just stick a little bit of margin bottom on this guy. Too much. Probably still too much. Cool. I might also put a minimum width on this guy. Min width of... Just see how that goes. Yeah, nice. Okay, that's good. And then our contact form. So our contact form will be solid 1 pixel. Nice, we'll give it some padding all the way around of 20 pixels, let's say. Let's have a look at what that's looking like. This is what we're seeing so far. It's looking good. You know, while I'm here, I might actually, let's put some padding on the entire content holder so that we can get this off the edge of the page when our screen is small. So for our entire content holder, padding of, let's say, 50 pixels. Okay, nice, that's off the edge of the page. Looking good. Okay, now this is going to be another flex holder, another flex box. So display, flex, and this time our left holder, I'm going to set flex grow to 1, and our right holder is going to have a predefined width. Because it's just a submit button, so it's not going to be able to resize, but our input boxes will be able to resize. So let's just set that to have a width of 120 pixels. Cool. And then our input box, that's going to have a border, text color, and it's going to have some padding. Let's say 10 pixels. And then let's actually add our input box to this so that our input box also gets the color and the font family, the default stuff. And then we want our input boxes to fill the width, maximum width that they can. So width 100%. Let's change that. This is what we have now. It's getting closer. So we've got to put some spacing between these input boxes. And then we've got to sort out this submit button. So for spacing between the input boxes, we could put margin. If we did like margin bottom, that would be problematic because it would put the margin on both those boxes. And then we'd have another negative margin issue to deal with. An easier way to do that would be to use something called pseudo selectors. So in the magical world of less, when I type an AND symbol, that represents this. So it represents whatever the thing is that it is inside. And this will make sense because if I go and then colon first child, what this will do is it will affect every input box that is the first child of something. So looking at our HTML, this input box here is the first child of left holder. So it will only affect this one, not that one. So here I can go margin bottom 20 pixels, save that, and that has set a margin only on the first input box. That's this space here. Now let's work out our submit thing. So we're going to have to center our submit button. Number of ways to do this. An easy way is, again, flex boxes. We can make our right holder a flex box. So now we've got a flex box within a flex box. And we can go justify content center. That will center whatever is inside. It will center it horizontally. But then we can also go align items center. And that will center the thing vertically. Ta-da! And there it is, where we need it to be. Now, we got some work to do on that button. So, border, 3 pixels, solid, what's our accent? Accent color. Border radius, just do it a lot. Width, I'm going to say 80 pixels. Height, 80 pixels. Background color is going to be none. Sorry. Transparent. What else are we going to do? Text align will be center. So that's going to actually align the text within there centered. I think that might be all that we need. Let's see how that looks. Cool. That's looking pretty good. Just realized this is a different font to everything else. To fix that, we can just chuck button in here as well. There we go. So now it's the right font. Now we also need to make it so that when we hover on here, we get the little hand. And also, we don't want it to do this horrible blue border thing when we click it. So let's make both those things happen. And again, we can use pseudo selectors for this. So we can say and hover. This means when it's hovering, the cursor will be a pointer. And also, when it's active, or when it's focused, I think it's and focus, then we don't want it to have that border, which is actually an outline. So outline none. It's like a special kind of border. Oh, I didn't refresh it. There we go. So now we have our hand. And also, we don't have the stupid outline when we click it. Now, we're going to take this a step further, and well, hang on, a couple of things. So first of all, this button, we want it to be centered in this space, but right now it's to the left. Why is that happening? It's happening because we've got this padding here. So we can solve this problem by getting rid of this padding here. So let's do that. We go to our right holder. Actually, it's not that. It's here, isn't it? Padding right, 0 pixels. We'll cancel that out. And there you go. Now that's being spaced a lot nicer. Now let's do some crazy hover effects on that button. So when we hover, it's going to be a pointer. But I also am going to say that the background color of the button will go to our accent color. And our text color, which we can change with just the color property, is going to be white. And actually overall, I'm going to make that have a bit more weight. That font should be a bit thicker. So now this means when we hover over the button, it makes the background green, and it's making that text change color so it's legible. But that text is still not popping out enough for me, so I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm going to increase the letter spacing. So font size of, let's try 13. And what else was I going to do? Oh, letter spacing. Let's see how that looks. Too big. Still too big. Make it 11. Must have been really tiny before. Okay, that's looking alright. Cool. One way that we can make this even cooler is by adding a transition. So it means that there will be a little bit of, well, it'll fade rather than just changing as we hover over it. We can do that really easily just by on the submit button going transition 0.1s, 0.1 seconds. I find that's a good amount of time. Oh yeah.
Oh my.
That's good. Spectacular. Alrighty. So, another problem I've just noticed. Our page is doing this. Why is this happening? This is happening because our navbar, we've done two things to it. We've given it padding of 20 pixels, which is pushing everything in, but we've also set its width to 100%. So what's happening now is it's kind of doing things in the wrong order. It's setting the width of the nav to 100%, and then it's adding that padding, which is having the effect of actually increasing the width of the navbar. So there's this way that we can actually tell it, when we say width 100%, we want the total width of the element to never ever exceed 100% of the page. The way that we do that, like we don't care about padding, we don't care about anything like that. So if we go to our nav, we go box sizing and border box. So this will mean that now if we refresh the page, now our scrolly bar is gone, and we can have a look and we can see that that padding is around the element as it should be, and the total width of the element is 100%. Perfect. Alright, and now we've just got our footer. Now the footer is actually, it can be a bit tricky. Because looking at our page right now, there's not actually enough content on our page to push this footer to the bottom. So if we designed our footer, it would just be kind of floating here. So what can we do? We're going to position our footer fixed. So what that means is when normally things are positioned relative. So everything on this page is positioned relative to something else. That's why all these margin top paddings, whatever, that's how it all works. But if we say that something is going to be fixed, then we're saying, actually, we don't care about anything else on the page. We're just going to position that thing according to the edges of the screen. And it's just going to be wherever it's going to be, and nothing else matters. That might sound like an amazing way to position things. You might be thinking, oh my god, why don't we just use that for everything? It would be so much easier. But the problem is that when you're positioning things in a way that they don't care about other things, then that's when you get overlaps and you get things that don't make sense and your layout gets stuffed up. So it's actually, although it's harder, you need to position pretty much everything relative. You shouldn't be positioning very many things in fixed or absolute terms. But that's what we're going to do right now. So, where's our footer? Here's our footer. I'm going to say, oops, position fixed. And then when we're positioning fixed, the properties we use are left, right, top, and bottom, which controls how far is this thing away from the top, left, bottom, and right of whatever thing is inside. So this thing's inside the page. So left will be 0, right 0, because it's going to be full width, bottom 0, and then we're not actually going to set top because we just want it to be on the bottom of the page. So its distance from the top will change depending on how high the screen is. So we don't care about the top. And then we're going to say, oops, height. And how high does it need to be? You know what? We're not going to bother with that because the content inside it will create its own height. So let's see what happens. Okay, excellent. This is actually working now. So if we have a look at this, we can see that this is our footer. I can't quite hover on it. Hang on. That's our footer. So you can see now once we put the right padding in and we position all the stuff inside it properly, it's going to work the way we want it to. So our quote holder, that's going to have a lot of padding, like a lot. But it's only going to have top padding and bottom padding. So top padding, let's say 50 pixels. Also 50 pixels. An easier way to specify the padding. An easier way to specify the padding is actually like this. You can go padding, and then the first number that you put in will be the left and right padding. So 50 pixels, whatever. In this case, 0. And then the next number will be the top and bottom padding. So this is the same as doing padding top, padding bottom, 50. Oh, wait, I got that wrong. It's the other way around. This is why I don't use this very often, because I always forget which way it is, and I just spend too much time doing that. Yeah, so this is your top, bottom, and this is your left, right. Alright, and then our quote, that's the actual text. We're going to say text align center, font weight 200. This is really thin stuff. Font style is going to be italic. Font size is pretty big on this one. Let's try that. Let's just see what we get. Nice, that's a bit too big. I'm just going to track that down a bit. Yeah, it's too noticeable. That's looking alright. There you go. So now we've got our quote there. Spectacular. And then we're going to just center these off. So, easy way to do that. We can just set margin auto to those guys. Wait, that does not work. So, easy way to center these links is we can go display flex, justify content center, and then they're going to be centered, and then we just have to put some margins on this. So we can just go margin, and it's probably going to be fine if we just do something like that, actually. Yeah, that's pretty fine. So looking at our page, that's what it looks like now. So we just got to take off some of the default styling for these links, because we don't want them to be blue like that. So we might go text decoration none, color is going to be the normal text color. Excellent. And we could say that, oh actually, hang on. We should have A in here. That will just solve all of our problems. Nice, and now they're looking normal. But we want them to probably do something when you hover over them because they're links. So I might make it that when you hover over them, they become the accent color. Color will become the accent color. That's not a great color for hovering. It's a bit hard to read, but you get the idea. We'll just leave it like that. And that's our app done. At least visually. So we can type in that. We'll be able to hit the submit button. And yeah, it's looking pretty good. But there's still, I mean, as an experienced developer, I can still see some problems with this. So one of the problems that I can see is that because we've used, we've made our footer is fixed. If I resize the page down, now our footer's on top of everything. And that's not good. No. So we need some solution to make it so that, like, if our web page is below a certain height, then this footer will kind of become relative. But if the page is too long, then it will become fixed. But that's a bit more advanced. That's like a JavaScript thing. So we'll save that. But yeah, our page is looking pretty good.